The sun hung low over the horizon, casting long, golden shadows across the dusty streets of the small frontier town. Birds chirped faintly in the distance, and the wind whispered through the dry grass that rolled endlessly across the plains. The town itself was modest, a cluster of wooden buildings, a general store, a saloon, and a handful of houses scattered near the main road. At the edge of town stood a ranch, its fences worn but sturdy, marking the land of one of the strongest men the region had ever known. Jake was that man. Broad-shouldered, sun-tanned, and quiet. He moved with an ease that spoke of years spent working the land and handling horses. Most townsfolk respected him, though some admitted a quiet fear of his imposing presence. Jake did not seek attention, nor did he care for gossip. His life was simple. Work hard, care for his ranch, and live with honesty. Yet beneath his rugged exterior lay a gentle heart, one that few had ever glimpsed. Clara arrived in town on a bright morning, her wagon bouncing gently over the uneven road. She had come to live with her aunt after leaving a life that had taught her caution and self-reliance. She was a young woman, strong-willed and independent, with eyes that missed little and a mind that thought quickly. Clara had learned early that trust was a fragile thing. People, she knew, could be kind or cruel. Her first days were busy. She unpacked her belongings, examined her new property, and tried to make the unfamiliar space feel like home. One task proved especially difficult. A broken fence that left part of her small pasture open to wandering cattle. She had tried to fix it herself, but the wood was heavy, and the nails resisted her efforts. Sweat ran down her face, and she sighed, frustrated. She needed help, but asking for it went against her instinct to handle things on her own. Jake happened to ride by on his horse, returning from checking the farthest edges of his property. His sharp eyes caught the sight of a woman struggling with heavy timber near her pasture. Without hesitation, he guided his horse closer, the hooves kicking up soft clouds of dust. "Need a hand?" he asked, his voice deep but calm. There was no judgment, only a simple offer. Clara looked up, startled. She had heard stories about Jake, how he was strong and unyielding, how some even found him frightening. Yet here he was, offering help without a hint of arrogance or expectation. She hesitated, weighing her pride against practicality. Finally, she nodded. "If you don't mind," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Jake dismounted with a practiced grace, his boots crunching against the dry soil. He lifted the heavy post with ease, his muscles flexing under the strain, and set it firmly in place. Clara watched, a mixture of awe and trepidation stirring in her chest. He was strong, too strong, perhaps, but there was a gentleness in how he worked, careful not to pinch her fingers or crush the boards. "You're too strong," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. She looked at him, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "But I'll trust you." Jake paused, meeting her gaze. A flicker of surprise crossed his usually composed face, quickly replaced by a small, approving smile. "Good," he said simply. "We'll get it done together." Over the next few days, Jake returned often. He helped Clara repair fences, secure gates, and handle the handful of animals that roamed her property. With each task, she observed him closely, not just his strength, but his patience, his steady hands, and the way he spoke to the horses and cattle with quiet respect. It became clear that Jake's power was not meant to intimidate, but to protect and support. Clara began to see a side of him that contradicted the rumors she had heard in town. He could be serious, yes, but also gentle, thoughtful, and unexpectedly kind. He did not boast about his strength, nor did he take pride in the fear some townsfolk felt toward him. Instead, he acted with quiet dignity, letting his work speak for itself. One afternoon, a small crisis tested their budding trust. A young horse, startled by the wind, bolted from its enclosure, heading straight for the main road. Clara froze, unsure how to stop it. She called out, her voice trembling with panic. Jake reacted instantly. He moved quickly, guiding the horse back toward the pasture with calm authority. Clara watched, amazed at the ease with which he handled the situation. "You see?" he said once the horse was safe, smiling faintly. "Nothing to fear if you stay calm." Clara nodded, feeling a warmth of relief and admiration. She realized that her initial wariness had been natural, but misplaced. Jake's strength was not threatening, it was protective. Days turned into weeks, and their acquaintance deepened into a quiet friendship. They shared stories while mending fences, laughed at the small frustrations of ranch life, and discovered a mutual appreciation for honesty and hard work. Clara told Jake about her past struggles, and he listened without judgment, offering only support. In return, he shared glimpses of his own life. The long hours on the ranch, the pride he felt in keeping his land and animals safe, and the quiet solitude he sometimes cherished. One evening, the town held a small gathering at the saloon, a mix of celebration and entertainment. Clara, still cautious but curious, attended with Jake. She observed him interact with others, noticing his quiet leadership and the respect he commanded without force or arrogance. When a minor misunderstanding arose between two townsfolk, Jake intervened calmly, resolving it without escalating the conflict. Clara felt a surge of admiration, realizing that his strength extended beyond physical power. It was in his character, his patience, and his fairness. Later, as they walked back to her property under a sky painted with the colors of sunset, Clara glanced at him with a mix of gratitude and newfound trust. "I think I understand you better now," she said softly. "You're strong, stronger than I expected, but you're also kind. I feel safe with you." Jake looked down at her, a flicker of warmth in his eyes. "That's all I've ever wanted," he replied. "To protect, to help, and to be trusted." From that moment, their bond began to grow in a way that neither could deny. Clara found herself looking forward to Jake's visits, not only for the help he offered, but for his quiet company. Jake, in turn, admired Clara's courage, her determination, and the way she faced challenges head-on. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a recognition of shared strength and mutual respect that slowly edged toward something deeper. By the time autumn arrived, the ranch and Clara's property were in good order, the fences repaired, the animals cared for, and the land well tended. Yet the most important work had been in building trust. Clara had learned to rely on Jake without fear, and Jake had found someone who valued him not for his strength alone, but for his heart and character. The story of their first meeting, their small adventures together, and the growing trust between them became a quiet legend in the town. People noticed the way Clara's eyes lit up when Jake arrived, and how Jake seemed to soften in her presence. But neither of them cared for gossip or approval. They only cared for the quiet bond forming between them, built on respect, shared experiences, and the promise of safety. The final days of Part 1 saw them standing together at the edge of Clara's pasture, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The wind carried the faint scent of wildflowers and the earthy aroma of the plains. Clara turned to Jake, her voice soft but steady, repeating the words that had begun their journey together. "You're too strong, but I'll trust you." Jake nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "And I'll never break that trust," he said simply. In that moment, the beginnings of something lasting took root. It was not a story of instant love, nor of grand gestures. It was a story of quiet understanding, of shared strength, and of the delicate unfolding of trust between two people who had learned, each in their own way, the value of honesty, courage, and kindness. And so, the first chapter of their journey came to a close, not with fireworks or declarations, but with the soft certainty that they were beginning a bond that would endure, as steady and strong as the land they called home. The first frost of autumn had touched the plains, leaving a delicate white shimmer over the grass in the early mornings. Clara's property looked beautiful in the crisp air, and the ranch beyond it was quiet except for the occasional lowing of cattle and the soft neigh of horses. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Every day, Clara and Jake worked side by side, mending fences, tending animals, and preparing for the long winter ahead. But it was more than work that had grown between them. Over the weeks, they had shared laughter, stories, and quiet moments that spoke louder than words. Clara found herself smiling more, feeling a warmth she had not known for years. Jake, too, felt a shift in his heart. He had always been strong, capable, and steady. But Clara's presence made him aware of a gentler side, a side that wanted to protect not just the land or animals, but her entirely. One evening, the sky blazed with shades of orange and purple, and the wind carried a hint of coming cold. Clara had been working near the barn, carrying bundles of hay, when she heard the familiar sound of hoofbeats. Jake arrived, dust trailing behind his horse, his hat tipped against the low sun. He smiled as he saw her struggling with the heavy load. "Let me help you with that," he said, taking a bundle from her arms with ease. Clara hesitated for a moment, a faint blush on her cheeks. She had grown used to helping herself. But somehow, she didn't mind his assistance. Together, they carried the hay to the barn, exchanging quiet conversation along the way. Clara spoke of her dreams for the property, imagining a small garden for the next spring and a cozy home where she could feel safe. Jake listened, offering practical advice, but also encouragement. He didn't dismiss her ideas, and in return, she valued his experience and perspective. As they finished their work, a sudden wind picked up, sending a chill through the air. The old barn doors creaked, and a loose board rattled loudly. Clara jumped, startled, but Jake was immediately beside her, steadying her with a gentle hand on her arm. "You're safe," he said softly. "Nothing will happen while I'm here." End quote. When you har and in redder war. Clara felt a strange mix of relief and admiration. She had said it before, but now, the words held more meaning. "You're too strong, but I'll trust you." This time, she added a small smile, her eyes meeting his. Jake's gaze softened. "And I'll never give you a reason not to." A few days later, a minor crisis tested both their courage and their bond. A sudden storm swept across the plains, strong winds whipping dust and leaves into the air, rattling fences and shaking the small trees around Clara's property. Some of the animals became frightened, and Clara found herself struggling to keep them safe. Jake arrived just in time, guiding her through the chaos. He secured the animals, holding the frightened horse steady, while Clara calmed the others. The wind tore at their clothes and hair, but neither of them faltered. Jake's strength was apparent, but so was his calm determination, his ability to face danger without panic. Clara's heart swelled with respect and trust, and by the time the storm passed, she knew without doubt that she could rely on him completely. In the quiet that followed, they sat together on the steps of the barn, catching their breath. She did not need to fear his strength. It was a gift, one he used not to dominate, but to protect and support. "You really are amazing," she said softly, the words barely audible. Jake chuckled, a sound rare and warm. "I'm just doing what's right," he replied. "But thank you for trusting me." Their days continued, filled with shared labor and small joys. Jake taught Clara how to ride more confidently, showing her how to guide a horse without force, and how to listen to the animal's movements. Clara, in turn, brought moments of lightness into Jake's life, laughter over spilled feed, playful arguments over chores, and quiet conversations under the wide-open sky. They began to anticipate each other's needs, helping without being asked, and sharing moments of connection that spoke louder than words. One afternoon, While repairing a fence together, Clara paused to watch Jake work. He moved with a rhythm that seemed effortless, his strong hands shaping the wood, securing the posts with precision. She felt a flutter in her chest, a mixture of admiration, gratitude, and something deeper she could not yet name. "You're really something," she said, a little breathlessly. Jake looked up, meeting her gaze, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. "You're stronger than you think. You handle everything with courage. That's rare." Clara's cheeks warmed, but she did not look away. "Maybe," she admitted. "But it's easier when I know someone's here to help me." Jake's eyes softened, and he reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. It was a small gesture, but it carried weight, a promise, a reassurance, and an unspoken bond forming between them. As the weeks passed, their connection deepened. One evening, after a long day of work, they shared a quiet moment, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The plains glowed gold and red, and the air was filled with the scent of dry grass and distant wildflowers. Clara felt a sense of peace she had not known in years. "I feel safe here," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake's gaze lingered on her, his expression serious but gentle. "You should feel safe," he said. "You can trust me to be here, always." The wind shifted, carrying with it a sense of calm and promise. Clara looked into his eyes and repeated the words that had started their journey together, this time with certainty. "You're too strong, but I'll trust you." Jake's hand found hers, holding it firmly but tenderly. Winter approached slowly, bringing colder winds and longer nights. Clara and Jake prepared the ranch and her property for the season, ensuring that the animals were safe and the land ready for the frost. They worked together seamlessly, their trust and understanding evident in every task. During the long winter evenings, they spent time by the fire, sharing stories and dreams. Clara spoke of her hopes for the future, a life filled with stability, warmth, and companionship. Jake shared his own vision, a life rooted in the land, in honesty, and in protecting those he cared for. They discovered shared values and mutual admiration, and the bond between them grew stronger with each passing day. One night, as snow began to fall gently outside, Clara found herself speaking more openly than she ever had. "I never thought I'd find someone I could rely on completely," she admitted, her voice soft. "But with you, I do." Jake took her hand in both of his eyes reflecting the flickering firelight. "I've always been strong, yes. But you've shown me a different kind of strength, one that comes from the heart. You've earned my trust as much as I've earned yours." Clara felt a swell of emotion, a mixture of relief, joy, and love. She realized that what had begun as cautious friendship had blossomed into something deeper. A partnership built on respect, trust, and understanding. The final days of Part 2 saw them working side by side on the ranch, tending the animals, repairing fences, and preparing for the cold months ahead. Yet amidst the labor, they found moments of quiet intimacy, sharing a blanket by the fire, laughing at small mishaps, and walking together under the starry night sky. One evening, after a long day, Jake stopped and turned to Clara. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the snow-dusted plains. "Clara," he said softly, "I want you to know, I care for you, more than I ever thought I could care for anyone. You've become the most important part of my life." Clara's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness but of joy. She reached for his hand, trembling slightly. "I trust you, Jake," she said, "and I want to be with you." Jake pulled her gently into his arms, holding her close as the wind whispered around them. The world seemed to fade, leaving only the warmth of their connection. In that embrace, they understood each other completely, the strength, the trust, and the quiet promise of love that would endure through every season. As night fell over the plains, the ranch stood silent and peaceful, a symbol of stability and home. Clara and Jake, side by side, had forged a bond that was stronger than any storm, deeper than any challenge, and more enduring than the land they both cherished. It was not a story of grand gestures or fleeting passion. It was a story of trust, respect, and the quiet power of love, built on honesty and understanding. And as they held each other close under the starry sky, they both knew that this was only the beginning of a life shared, a life rooted in strength, trust, and unwavering care.